this doesn't turn around by the end of the year when I think we're going to need to get a job. That was difficult. That was difficult on the marriage. It was very stressful for him. Obviously, I didn't want to stress him. He didn't want to stress me. So we're kind of walking.
Hi, my name's Yudishtra. This is my wife, Piya. We're a husband and wife podcast.
When I think of the idea of a turning point, our guest today is one of the first few people who come to mind. I first met her at an event in Damai's studio, and when I first heard her speak, there was something about her that left a huge presence in me. She had this calm and this ability to make every single person in the room feel seen. We later then eventually ended up in the same book club, and slowly and quietly that became a bridge to a more personal conversation. Very recently, I was going through a very difficult time with regards to my fertility journey, and I reached out to her. We met up for coffee, and little did I know that conversation would have such a profound impact on how I moved forward in that journey of mine. Put our hands together for the woman of many breakthroughs, Michelle Ann Iking.
Thank you. What a lovely warm welcome.
We truly appreciate you taking the time to come here today. I remember when we first met, it would have been that wasn't Stephen Bartlett.
Yes.
Was it the
speaking tour?
Speaking tour.
That's right.
And even though it was for a brief moment that we met, but my wife Piya has been speaking a lot about you, and
Very
truly honored to have you here on our podcast. So let's just jump in. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, which led you eventually to the corporate world.
My childhood, gosh.
Where do we begin?
I was a child I was the oldest girl in a family of 4.
All right.
To a fairly strict Asian father.
Okay.
Very charismatic, very demanding. I thought that my not enoughness was purely as a symptom of him being a typical Asian parent. But I recently came to realize that some of the dynamics between him and my mom also contributed to that. But ultimately, that resulted in me being somebody in corporate that was quite hard on myself. In fact, I can tell a story of how I knew coaching was going to be one of my things. Because I used to work in HR, and my job was to hire executive coaches for our seniors.
Okay.
And there was a particular coach I remember hiring who was very good at her job. She was very expensive, very good. Obviously, the conversations between her and our seniors was confidential, but she would always take me out for coffee to probably show me how good she was. Like, she stealth coached me. And I tell you this story in relation to my upbringing because there was one conversation where she was just asking it sounded like a fairly simple question. How are you, Michelle?
Okay.
And at that point in time, I wore busyness like a badge of honor.
Okay.
And I distinctly remember telling her, oh, I'm so busy. I feel like I'm one of those plate spinners, and there's 12 split plates, and 8 of them are going to come crashing down if I don't keep my eyes on them. So it's going on and on and on. And suddenly, she looked at me and she said, Michelle, you're so needy. Which was quite offensive. I was very shocked. It was very offensive to me, who considered myself quite self-assured and independent and all that. But I kept it together, and I was just asking her curiously, why do you say that?
Yeah.
And she said, in the last 5 minutes, you've said the words, I need to, 7 times.
Wow.
I need to do this.
I need to like this. Okay. And then I was didn't know anyone was counting. Fine. And then she asked the kicker question, which was, where do you think that comes from, Michelle? Ouch. And I knew, and I burst into tears in front of her. It was in some random hotel in KL. I burst into tears, and I realized it was because of my father. I mean, God bless him, he's not with us anymore. But I realized that all my striving was very much in relation to wanting to please him. And they're not kind of, how does that serve you, etc., etc. And it was one of my many turning points that I realized I didn't have to tear myself inside out.
Wow. And at that point of time, how far along were you in like your self-discovery journey? Because for you to have been able to identify that, that it was a trigger when she said that.
I was already working in the space of learning and development. So personal growth for the purpose of growing in your career was already, that was my day job, right? And in fact, I understood coaching as a intellectual skill. As in, if you coach, then you can get the best out of your team members, etc. But that was the first time that I understood the power of coaching to get at what lies beneath. And so it was a wake up call for me that I was somewhat being puppeted. And my dad wasn't even doing anything. Right? He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
But I was still that sort of really anxious, eager to please person. So I think that perhaps started a little bit of me unraveling, not in a bad way, in a good way, sort of like, hey, calm down. Just don't have to always be that. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
How did you, in this process, right? When you in especially in the corporate world itself, what will be some of the things, which you have perhaps learned in the corporate world that you actually, that has helped you today?
Well, I think it's useful that I obviously know how to deal with challenging stakeholders.
Okay.
So I do corporate training now, and it's always helpful when I'm talking to my students, and it stops my training from just being this fancy PowerPoint with frameworks. I absolutely can commiserate with the long hours, the stress, the feeling like you don't have a life, the fear of not being able to satisfy your bosses, not being able to spend as much time with your family as you want, taking holidays that are not really holidays. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a lived experience for me. So yeah, that's necessary, I think, to add credibility to what I do right now.
When you were in your corporate world, right? Before we move on into your entrepreneurship journey, were there anything, specific, did you say that you are now currently unlearning?
I think so. I don't have any role models for entrepreneurship in my family. I never saw that. I think my father dabbled. You'll hear me talk a lot about my father. This is a very central figure in my head. He dabbled, but he wasn't successful per se. So I never had any role model. So my whole concept of success growing up was study hard, get the good job, work your way up through the ranks.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll be lucky enough to get a good position with that kind of salary and that kind of thing. And I guess my concept was you can only earn as much as someone else tells you you're worth.
Yeah.
Right? And if the size of the job is like that, and the company is like, and the market says that's the rate, then you hope you can be better. You can be the best kind of HR person, so you can edge on the high end of the range, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm very privileged, and I hope I don't jinx myself, but I'm very privileged to say I've doubled my corporate salary. I've hit figures that I used to think, oh, there's only CEOs can earn this kind of money. Only CEOs can earn, and you don't want that kind of stress. You say, okay, never mind, I don't earn this kind of money because that's reserved for the people at this level, and they're very, very stressed. Right?
I know what you mean.
I don't want to be stressed.
I just assume that the more money you earn, the more problems you'll have. And that's something that I'm needing to unlearn as well. So I can really resonate with what you're saying.
And now the first few months that it happened, I was like, wait a minute. if I calculate all this right, and assuming everyone pays me, like this is a really good month. Maybe it's a fluke, right? and then I was looking at the books and the forward business. And I'm like, hey, that's another month, and that's another month. Like I can replicate this. And yes, because training, you come there's peaks and troughs, right? So example, obviously nobody's training before Chinese New Year. Nobody's training, so there'll be low months. But on the whole, I'm very happy.
I'm very happy to hear that. I mean, like this, it comes back to the question that I wanted to ask, which is that you see, like usually people would say that okay, the first few years of venturing into entrepreneurship is going to be the hardest. Like people would tell us to like keep your expectations low. And
it was hard. It was hard.
So how was that for you?
So initially, I didn't know. It was supposed to be a sabbatical.
Okay.
It was supposed to be a sabbatical. I'd reached a point where I realized that in the corporate role that I was doing, really I was getting burnt out. It wasn't what I wanted to do, and so I wanted to take a step back and figure things out. That's when I decided to take my coaching certification as well as the HRD or training certification. But I really thought, okay, I'll take this break in a few months, but at the end of the year, potentially I might still get another job because I don't know if I can really make that kind of money that I was making in corporate just doing coaching and training. And it was hard in the beginning because I did say I left my corporate role in, I want to say, April 2023, I want to say.
Okay.
I only incorporated my company in August.
Okay.
So that's when I kind of, okay, maybe I'll try. And I started pitching for some projects with some bigger, more established companies. And I would write all these pitch decks and nothing would come back.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing would come back, right? And you like, oh. And when the sometimes the size of the project would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. And if I get this, this will tide me over for a few months.
Yeah.
And then nothing would come of it. And it's inching slowly more towards the end. And I remember my husband, so obviously I had a little bit of a buffer. But he had to step up a little bit financially. We've always been a dual income family.
Yeah.
And as my savings were dwindling, he had to step up more. And the Victoria Beckham you mentioned, I'm not sure if you've seen the latest one.
The one on
I mean, obviously we're not at that level. But then there's this moment where David Beckham is talking about how her business is floundering and he has kept putting money in.
Yeah.
And at some point he's saying, I can't keep doing this. And she's talking about how she's so embarrassed to go home and she hates the fact that she has to discuss finances with her husband who's also an investor, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty much our situation. Like I've always been fairly independent in my finances, but having to kind of like, oh honey, I need more money. And him kind of like, this doesn't turn around by the end of the year. I need to get it. That was difficult. That was difficult on the marriage. It was very stressful for him. Obviously, I didn't want to stress him. He didn't want to stress me. So we're kind of walking. Because he's also recognizing that I was so much happier being out of that role. So on the one hand, he's like, this is obviously better for her, but I don't know how much longer we can sustain this.
And at that point of time, I think you already had your 2 kids.
Yes. So there's all that as well, right?
When you were taking a sabbatical, right? Did you have in mind that I'm going to take a sabbatical and I'm going to try and start something? Or were you looking at it in the context, I'm going to take a sabbatical and see where it goes?
In the very first, let's see how it goes. I just need to center myself. I feel like I had the pace of that role. I really felt I lost myself.
Okay.
So it was really a bit more of gathering myself and kind of like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I just need to gather myself for a little bit. And hence then the coaching certification, the training certification. I literally went to a program, another program. It was called the Turning Point Program.
Okay. Wow.
Cool. Program in Greece. I went there with a view that I would be picking up another certification. It was a workshop to teach you how to work with certain phototherapy tools. It was just held in Greece. So I thought I was going there to learn, I'm going to add this new skill set to my coaching and training skill set. But as is often the case when you're working with these tools that are quite transformative, you have to go through the process.
Yes.
And that was definitely a turning point for me. There's certain parts of the workshop and the exercise where they kind of really make you face, things in the past. And why do you think like that? And it woke me up to a lot of things. That was a real turning point. And I think probably after that, I mean, it wasn't that there was the money started shifting, but I kind of knew I didn't want to go back to a job. So like by hook or by crook,
It's gonna work.
I had to figure something out, right? My husband was like, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna support you, but like you have a timeline. If by December, I'm sorry. So I just figured it out. And I was doing little tiny workshops. I did a retreat at the year end because the corporates had wound down their training. So I thought, okay, well, November I could still do something. So I did my very first retreat, which was still a big
Is that the one with On the Rise?
That's right.
Yeah, okay,
That's right.
Okay,
So let me say, so I'm quite a manifester. So I remember during the pandemic, I had read How to Design Your Life, the Stanford course, it's a book by some Stanford University. That's so basically it's how you design your life. And one of the exercises I think was the Odyssey, where you plan 3 versions of your life.
Okay.
And the first version is like, okay, if you carry on whatever you're doing now and just optimize that, what would your life look like? Okay. And the second one is I'm putting my own words probably, if you angle it with 15% kind of switch or 50 degrees turn, how would it be, right? So, okay. Then the third option was like, if you had no limits, in terms of resources, you could do whatever you want. You didn't have to worry about what people judged you for. What would you do with your life? And at that point, I like planning events. I like travel. I like the development, the workshops. And I thought, I would love to create these trips where I could, put it'd be a development opportunity, but it's in a location and there'll be fabulous meals with beautiful flowers and la la la.
Wow.
And at that point I thought, I've made this up. Like this is a dream job that it doesn't exist. Little did I know there was a thriving retreat business already then. So one of the first courses, I signed up for multiple courses, when I started my sabbatical was this course given by an American woman. She'd been running retreats for 25 years.
Okay.
I didn't even realize they were a thing.
Yeah.
But I took her course and okay, I'll learn. And when On the Rise said that they were wanting to plan their own retreat, I thought I'd be a bystander. I thought, I can help. I want to help. I want to run a retreat of my own one day. Yeah. So maybe you can put me.
Yeah,
I'll be on the committee. I'll be on the committee, right? That's what I thought. Right? Kate goes, yeah, again. And then basically she said, oh, hey, Michelle, so listen, I'm going to hook you up with Marissa and you guys are going to lead it. You guys are going to lead it. So I met Marissa, hit it off. Brilliant. Marissa Perry, hit it off. And we just made it happen.
Do you feel like whatever you've been manifesting has been coming to life?
Absolutely. I'm somewhat known as the probably annoying law of attraction queen. Family. I have a tagline. It's like #LOA, #LOA. And in the past, people probably, my family members probably would have thought, oh, that's Michelle being annoying. Again. But I think that they've seen enough evidence of stuff coming true. So when I say something now, my husband, he gets ready. Like I will say something like, one day we'll go to Kenya. It's a pandemic now. We don't know if the world's going to survive. Yeah. But one day we're going to go and sit and have breakfast at this hotel where giraffes stick their head through the window.
And he knows that it's probably...
He's like, okay, I guess.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Wow.
It's going to happen. So Michelle said, it might delay a bit, might take a couple of years, but yeah, if you set her sight on it, somehow it's going to be in our future.
Really? Yeah. I've just got one more thing which I'm very, very intrigued and I want to ask this question. We talk a lot about entrepreneurship, right? The highs, the fun things which happens through. how do you ride the low points, and how do you overcome the challenges which comes with it?
So obviously, I've spoken to you about the initial periods,
Yes.
and even though now I would say, yes, financially, God willing, it will continue. I guess I'm very mindful that I exited corporate ostensibly to achieve freedom, right? Ostensibly to achieve
Yes.
freedom.
Yeah.
My current level of income necessitates me being physically in front of a corporate audience in order for me to get paid.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see that as being freedom if I have to continue this for the long term.
Yes.
So it's a roundabout way of answering your question in that I consider entrepreneurship my ticket to freedom. And so I'm always wanting to think, what do I need to do differently so that I achieve true freedom? And it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
It's little things like sometimes you're very excited, you want to get something done.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock, but then the kids need me to put to bed. And my kids and I have this ritual at night where they tell me, usually me, what is their highlight and low light of their day. And my son in particular really loves this. He likes to get in there with the hugs. And then because sometimes he can get a bit clingy, he'll be like, Mama, don't go yet, Mama, don't go, right? So I love it. I love it. But sometimes there's stuff to do. And I'm just like, okay, if I go in there, then he's going to hold on and he's not going to let me go. And then I remember one particular night where I was very annoyed. I was very irritated because he didn't want to let me go. He was a bit clingy. And I was thinking, I've got to put that proposal through. I've got to push it through. I've got to do all this. And he was being weird. I could feel myself getting really, really annoyed. And then I just stopped, took a breath, and I thought, why am I working so hard? Why am I working so hard? I'm working so hard because I want to have money so that I can spend time with my kids.
Yeah.
And we're right here. They're here. They're right here, you know? I remember my daughter saying, Mama, if you're your own boss, why don't you just give yourself more holidays? It's like, I wanted to snap some like snappy report. But it's like, that's the point, right? Otherwise, right now, I say I am truly enjoying my entrepreneurial journey, but it is still a job.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is still a job. If I'm not at it, I will not make money, right? So it's trying to tweak what is it? How does it need to evolve so that I'm 60 and I will be traveling the world and the money will still flow, right?
Yeah. Just
Wow.
going back from the part you mentioned about, you talked a little bit about your relationship with your kids, right? Did you at any point of time feel like you needed to, like you mentioned that you were able to ground yourself and like really ask yourself, like, why am I even doing this? But how do you, like, is mom guilt, is that a real thing?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And how do you overcome that? Or like, how has that been?
Mom guilt.
And is there such thing as dad guilt? Just asking.
To ask Kishore. He does a lot for the kids. I might have extra mom guilt, but the fact that my husband actually, I believe, does more than even 50% in regards to the kids.
Oh, wow.
Right? He really gets. He's the one to like, okay, what kind of activity should they be doing, etc., etc. I did have this conversation with him where I suspect that I said, babe, did you ever feel like, you talk about childhood, right? Did you ever feel like your childhood, like you didn't get enough of these activities, like you're some kind of job? You're trying to live your life through the kids, and poor kids are going to send to everything. So then he has the grace to not get so triggered. So he'll sit down for a while and he goes, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe I felt some sense of deprivation. Maybe I feel that, I don't blame my parents. They did the best they could with whatever resources and knowledge they had then. But yeah, maybe I felt like if I had been pushed or given a little more exposure, maybe I would have don't know where I be today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he goes, but why are you so slack? Why are you so slack? And I think it came as a consequence because for me, I was everywhere. I was every club, everyone. I was on the netball team. I was what because of that whole people pleasing bit.
Yes.
And I didn't want my kids to go through the whole self-doubt, self-questioning. And of course, I make money from people who were earlier versions of me, right? The whole thing about I'm not good enough, and I have this voice in my head that says, you're not quite there, you're not quite there. And I'm just like, don't do that to our children, please. I've been there. Don't do that. Let them be. Let them have fun. They'll figure it out. Like, chill.
But how does that work when like one partner, like I'm guessing that there's different, I wouldn't say different parental values, but I think like just the way that we parent, there's so much to it is like how we were brought up, right? So like, the husband and the wife would have very different dynamics. So like, is that a conversation that you and your husband had before you had kids? Or was it something that, okay, the kids are here, we're going to have to sit down and have this tough conversation? And how did that go?
I think firstly we're lucky that we're mostly very aligned. We mostly want very similar things. Potentially, we obviously go about them in different ways, but we can always talk about them. We can always talk about them, and we find a similarity. So I'll give an example. I remember one time when I was in the thick of corporate, and I was like, oh. I was trying to explain to my husband, and one of the training sessions, I had heard a trainer say, you know what, sometimes when my wife gets worked up, I ask her to draw out her feelings, draw out what's going on in her head so that I can understand it, because otherwise she's like, ah. So I thought, okay, babe, I'm going to do this thing. Okay, I learned it from something. I'm going to do this. So this is my life right now. Okay, this is my work, and this is this person, and this is happening. And meanwhile, my mom is here. She's a widow. And so he's listening to me. Right? And he goes, so what do you say? You have to wait till Alyssa comes back from Singapore. This is my staff who have been sent off to remote, that's an assignment. You have to wait for your staff to come back before you go see your mother, is it? He calls me out on my bullshit. He really calls me out on my bullshit. Then I'm like, no lah, I don't have to wait for this stuff to come back. So he calls me out on my BS. I call him out on his BS. I think it's nicer nowadays. It's a great thing if you can call each other out on your BS with humor. Rather than
exactly. Definitely getting
like the other day, it was so fun. So we live in a house, and my dream house, one day in the future, we will have 2 sinks. Two couches in the bathroom. But for now, one day. But for now, it is the one sink. And 95% of the sink is my sink. We've just got 2 separate toilets.
2 separate toilets!
So we're not that privileged. So one second, and then Keisha was like, babe, like, do you even use all this stuff, right? What is it bleeding out? It's all jumping out. There's so much stuff. And I was like, hey, it takes effort, to have this space. And he goes, yeah, but how many faces do you have?
No, but I guess that's the thing about like vulnerability in relationships, right? I think it really does take time to get there. And I think there will be certain probably events in your marriage that will probably allow you to shed that wall that you have. Like for us, I mean, we recently talked on our podcast about our fertility journey, and that was something that I reached out to you to speak about. And I was just sharing earlier about how that conversation I had with you, I can understand now when you mentioned earlier how your days in the corporate world and then like coming into your coaching, because I remember you asked me a question and I came back and I was telling Yudish, and I can't get that question out of my head. You asked me like, why do you have to think that it's so hard? Why do you have to? Because I kept telling you that okay, this doesn't happen, and I probably have to do an IVF, and this is gonna happen. But none of it has happened yet. And you asked me a question, but like, why can't you just have it easy? Why does it happen? The question you asked me, and I was just like, oh my goodness! Like every single time now, whenever I have these doubts about this, of course, things don't really go as planned. Like we had an appointment this morning that didn't go as planned, but your voice, like what you asked me, was ringing in my head. Like this is just part of the process. That I'm making it harder on myself. Nobody has ever told me that you can't have a child, So coming back to like the fertility journey and stuff, how was that for your marriage at that time? Because, like, we have spoken to a lot of other couples, and, like, us going through it ourselves, we realize that it's definitely something that really tests your marriage, right? So how was it for you guys at that time?
So first off, you have